Wanted to follow up with the court case, the Nelson case. Contrary to some of the House and Senate members and the governor, I believe the court did the right thing. For those of us who have been around for a while, we've heard this argument against the funding of DHHL, which 96 years ago we were told to do, that we've never done. Now you've got at least some court backing, of which now the governor and probably both houses are going to fight you with. Are you prepared to argue this separation of powers? Are you prepared to see how why OHA owns Kaka'ako? Because the court told them $300 million is due, and we funded it, and we allotted it. And when does this court case come to pass?
So, for myself, I'm one of 9, and I do want to recognize the other commissioners in the room, Wally Shibashi, David Ka'apu, and Pua Kanto, as well as, and then Ren, and Jean Ross Davis from Molokai, and William Richardson. So I mentioned that because this kuleana is one that I share with all of these individuals on the commission. When you ask, am I willing, are we willing, I think, or as the chair, I can respond as the chair, are we willing to, I'm sorry, you basically do what we need to do?
Exactly.
Essentially what you're saying? Yes, because I think that's our obligation as commissioners for this trust, which is articulated not only in this decision, but also in the Ahuna decision, which grew out of the East Hawaii. So it's not a new obligation on us as a fiduciary. We have to do what we have to do in order to advocate as strongly as we can for the resources that are constitutionally mandated for this program.
And are there various Hawaiian groups who also file amicus?
We have to make the ask of them. You know, we are starting to reach out to our beneficiaries, and there has been a positive response to that to ensure that this is that they're aware of this issue, and if there's a time to be heard, this is the time.
But it appears as though your budget is based upon the Nelson ruling to be sustained.
Well,
I mean, in other words, the numbers in here reflect that you are going to prevail.
We hope so. But
when will the court date come, so when this budget is put to bed, so to speak, you will know one way or the other that the budget is not moot, and then in effect it will be implemented? How soon will the decision come when this appeal takes place?
So I have my counsel here, and I'm just going to...
So what are the timelines here? You're supposed to go to the mic so people can hear what you're saying.
Chairman Takuda, Chairman Luke, honored representatives. My name is Mel Miyagi. I represented the Department of Hawaiian Home Lands and the commissioners in the Nelson case. We got the decision from Judge Castagnetti, and the state of Hawaii has filed their notice of appeal already. And as I'm sure this body knows, the Hawaii State Legislature had retained Mark Bennett, who has filed leave to file an amicus brief to support a motion to reconsider or alter or amend Judge Castagnetti's decision. So from the very beginning, we knew that this was a very contentious case of great significance, not only to the beneficiaries, but for the entire state because of the amounts of monies involved. But because of that, we are anticipating there's going to be an appeal. The normal appeal process would go from Judge Castagnetti, after she rules on this motion to amend the judgment, to an appeal to the Intermediate Court of Appeals, which could take a couple of years. And then from there, you can seek whichever party was aggrieved by the Intermediate Court of Appeals decision to seek a writ of certiorari, which is basically an appeal to the Hawaii Supreme Court. There is a procedure whereby we can skip the step of going through the Intermediate Court of Appeals and go straight to the Hawaii Supreme Court. It is not a matter of right. It is something that the Supreme Court would have to address by way of a petition that we would have to submit there. We would anticipate that the Supreme Court would take it because of the argument that has been made by the attorney retained by this body based upon the separation of power. We obviously disagree with that argument. We believe that Judge Castagnetti's ruling was correct, and that when we get to the Supreme Court, that Judge Castagnetti's decisions will be upheld. But I'm speaking as the attorney for the commission, And I am very confident that the findings of Judge Castagnetti were based upon the evidence, and there's no dispute as to what the evidence was, and there is no dispute as to what the Constitution says, that the state shall provide sufficient sums. And the Supreme Court of Hawaii, which is the supreme arbiter of what the law of Hawaii is, has said that this body can and should provide sufficient sums. So that's where we're at. However, to answer your question, the problem with giving you a specific timetable by which there will be a final decision is very difficult. I would anticipate it's going to be a couple years, and the reason I say that is because all sides, the Attorney General's office, myself, the attorneys for the beneficiaries who filed the Nelson case initially, we all anticipated that whichever way Judge Castagnetti ruled, we would be going up to the Hawaii Supreme Court. I hope that answers your question.
Is the soonest 2 years, or that's the latest? What's the soonest that this could be resolved? Because this budget committee's got a few months and it's wrapped up. Which means we're going to have our full discretion on this without any court intervention.
There are problems with the finality of the judge's decision, and the reason is, and I make no claim to be a budget expert, and if I'm incorrect, I do apologize to my clients as well as to this body, but it's my understanding that, for example, the amounts that the Department of Hawaiian Home Lands asked for the fiscal year 2016, if we don't get that money by the end of this session, this upcoming session, and disperse it, the money lapses, so we can't go and, at least the Department of Hawaiian Home Lands can't sue to get a money damage award. However, there are provisions in Chapter 673 which can arguably be used by some of the beneficiaries to sue the state of Hawaii for damages and ask for a court award of the damages caused by the state's failure to provide sufficient sums, and that money would then be a damage award which would be then given back to the Department of Hawaiian Home Lands to replace the trust or the damage to the trust that should not have occurred had this, had the state of Hawaii provided sufficient sums. So yes, we understand the timelines. We've had a very, it's not personal, but it's a very contentious dispute with the state of Hawaii over the requirement by Judge Castagnetti's order for the legislature and the state of Hawaii to provide sufficient sums. We know it's a significant issue, and you know, the legislature has retained counsel which says Judge Castagnetti can't do that. We disagree with that position, and we will be going up to the Hawaii Supreme Court in any event, no matter who wins or loses in front of Judge Castagnetti.
How far is the reach back? There doesn't seem to be any in this regard. It's only right now, but as I said earlier, some of us who've been around for a couple of decades know that this is a yearly underfunding. And I don't see any reach back the way that OHA and
the reach back, there is none,
ceded lands
except for 2
issue.
years based upon Chapter 673 as I read it. I'm sure the Attorney General's office and Mr. Bennett will disagree with my interpretation of the ability of beneficiaries to file suit for damages if this monies is not appropriated and provided to the department, but that's a fight to come. We anticipate that the Nelson case, as it winds its way back up to the Hawaii Supreme Court, will create more law, and it's just a given, just given the amount of money involved and the significance of the issues to the beneficiaries as well as to the entire state budget.
Thank you for that overview. You're doing the right thing. It's going to be difficult is the problem. I have a very simple question now for the chair. Back to the Bolodrome. Are you going to put a condo there? And if so, why not? Because that's a quick starter home for what otherwise 27,000 people waiting. Can you do,
Sure.
Are you allowed legally to build condos?
I think we have the authority to do what multifamily, which probably could be defined as condos. One of the Before we get into that kind of structure, however, one of the challenges that we have to face is when you have common area expenses with our subdivisions that have homeowners associations and these common area expenses, and when families don't pay, we have not effectively figured out the enforcement mechanism for that. So once we figure that out, then it allows for condominiums to be a better option because your common area maintenance expenses are so much larger.
To date, how many actual Hawaiians have been placed on the homeland since 1920? What is the total?
We have, what we have is the leases.
Yeah, the leases.
The leases, which is, I believe, 98, between 9,800 and between 9,000 and 10,000 leases.
And there's
So when we
over, what, 250, 270,000?
Well, based
of
on
the
that earlier
population of
analysis
Hawaiians?
that was asked of me, I think the number was about 64,000 households that would be likely eligible to reside on the homelands.
And half of those are on the waiting
Or on
list.
the
You
list.
said 27,000.
27,000 applicants, yes.
Clearly, that has got to be sped up. So if the court does prevail and the money does come, can you spend the money? I mean, this is a funny question. Can you actually spend it down and not have all this money backlog?
We are gonna work like crazy to spend
I
it
mean,
down.
some
so
departments
that-
have a very easy time spending a lot of money.
Yes.
And so if you prevail, this will work out. A last rhetorical question. Is there a correlation between your underfunding and homelessness in the Hawaiian community? You don't have to answer that. I just see that there's clear fingerprints on all of that. Thank you very much
Thank
for your
you.
presentation. Thank you, chairs.
Senate, any questions? Okay.